Lisa had no idea that one small act of kindness would turn her entire world upside down. It was just another exhausting shift at the upscale restaurant where she worked, until she noticed a quiet teenage boy sitting alone. His clothes were simple, nothing flashy like the restaurant's usual wealthy clientele. He looked hungry and tired. Feeling a tug at her heart, Lisa did what she thought was right. She offered him a glass of water and a warm plate of food. But the moment her manager saw what she had done, the entire atmosphere shifted. "Are you out of your mind?" he barked, storming across the restaurant. "Do you know who pays to eat here? You're done. You're fired." Gasps filled the room. Lisa stood frozen, humiliated, as customers whispered and sneered. She had just lost everything for helping a stranger. But what she didn't know was that the boy she helped was Barron Trump, and by the next morning the entire world would know her name. Lisa had always believed that hard work and kindness would pay off. A 26-year-old waitress working double shifts at Le Chateau, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, she wasn't there by choice. She was there out of necessity. Every dollar she made went toward rent, groceries, and most importantly, medical bills for her mother, who had been struggling with a chronic illness for years. Despite the long hours, the rude customers, and the exhaustion that never seemed to fade, Lisa kept going. She had dreams of going back to school, of starting a small business one day, but for now, survival came first. Le Chateau wasn't just any restaurant. It was a place where billionaires, celebrities, and politicians dined in luxury. The chandeliers sparkled, the tablecloths were spotless, and the waitstaff was trained to be invisible, to serve without speaking unless spoken to. The golden rule: cater to the wealthy, ignore the rest. And no one enforced that rule more strictly than Mr. Simmons, the restaurant's sharp-eyed, sharp-tongued manager. He valued prestige above all else. To him, waiters weren't employees. They were disposable. If they weren't pleasing VIP guests, they were nothing. Lisa had learned to stay in her lane. She knew the rules. But on that fateful evening, as she carried a tray past the dimly lit corner booth, she noticed something unusual: a young boy sitting alone. He looked out of place, dressed simply, with no bodyguards or entourage. He had barely touched his food. Something about him reminded her of her younger brother. Quiet, reserved, trying to blend in. He looked lonely. Against her better judgment, Lisa hesitated for a moment, then did what came naturally. She leaned down and whispered, "Would you like something else?" It was a small act of kindness, nothing more. But what Lisa didn't know was that this boy wasn't just any customer. He was Barron Trump. And by the time the night was over, her life would never be the same again. Lisa had worked at Le Chateau long enough to know how things worked. The restaurant wasn't just about food, it was about status. Every detail, from the imported chandeliers to the hand-folded napkins, catered to the ultra-wealthy. The staff was trained to focus on those who mattered: the politicians, the CEOs, the socialites. But something about the boy sitting in the corner booth made Lisa pause. He was young, maybe 15 or 16, dressed simply in a black sweater and jeans. His posture was relaxed but distant, his eyes scanning the room as if he was waiting for someone. He had barely touched his steak, just pushing it around his plate. Lisa hesitated. The rule was clear: never waste time on guests who weren't high profile, but something inside her nudged her forward. She approached his table, careful not to seem intrusive. "Would you like anything else?" she asked softly. The boy looked up, surprised. No, I'm fine. Thank you." His voice was polite, but there was hesitation in his tone. Lisa glanced at the half-empty water glass in front of him. The restaurant had a strict policy against free refills unless the guest was important, but Lisa didn't care. She poured him more water anyway. "You sure? You don't have to sit here hungry." She smiled, the way she used to with her little brother when he was too shy to ask for something. The boy gave a small, appreciative smile. "Actually, maybe just some bread?" Lisa nodded. "Coming right up." She was halfway to the kitchen when she heard the sharp, angry voice of Mr. Simmons. "Lisa!" The restaurant fell silent. Lisa turned slowly, already knowing what was coming. Simmons stood near the bar, his expression cold, his eyes narrowed. "What do you think you're doing?" he asked, his voice carrying through the dining room. Lisa swallowed. "I was just—" Simmons cut her off, his face turning red. "We do not waste our time and resources on guests who are not paying for premium service. Do you even know who our customers are? This is not a charity house." Lisa's hands clenched into fists. "He's just a kid," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I was just trying to help." Simmons scoffed. "Help? You're here to work, not to hand out free food like this is some soup kitchen. You think I'm paying you to play social worker?" The wealthy guests watched in silence, some uncomfortable, some amused. No one spoke up. Lisa felt heat rise to her face, but she refused to back down. "I wasn't giving him a free meal," she said. I was just making sure he was okay. Simmons' expression twisted with disgust. That's it. I've had enough of your attitude. He turned to the rest of the staff. Let this be a lesson to all of you. If you waste time on unimportant guests, you will not have a job here. Then he looked back at Lisa. You're fired. A few gasps rippled through the dining room. Lisa stood frozen, disbelief washing over her. Fired? For this? She glanced at the boy who was staring at the scene, wide-eyed. Before she could say another word, he spoke up quietly. Sir, she didn't do anything wrong. Simmons barely spared him a glance. Stay out of this, kid. Lisa's heart pounded. She wanted to argue, to defend herself, but she knew it wouldn't matter. Simmons had already made up his mind. Taking a deep breath, she untied her apron and set it down on the table. With one last look at the boy, she whispered, Take care, okay? And with that, she turned and walked out of the restaurant, having no idea that the boy she had just helped was Barron Trump, and that by the next day, the entire world would know her name. Lisa walked home in a daze, her steps slow and heavy. The cold night air bit at her skin, but she barely noticed. Her mind replayed the scene over and over. Simmons' harsh words, the silence of the customers, the way her hands had trembled as she untied her apron. You're fired, the words echoed in her head, making her stomach twist. This job had barely paid enough to cover rent, but it had been something. Now she had nothing. When she reached the small apartment she shared with her mother, she paused at the door, taking a deep breath. How do I tell her? She stepped inside and her mother, a frail woman with graying hair, looked up from the couch. Lisa, you're home early. Lisa forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Yeah, I lost my job. Her mother frowned. What? What happened? Lisa sank onto the couch beside her. I was just trying to help someone. A kid, actually. But Simmons didn't care. He fired me on the spot. Her mother's face softened. She reached for Lisa's hand. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. Lisa swallowed the lump in her throat. I don't know what I'm gonna do, Mom. Rent's due in a week. I've got barely anything saved up. Her mother squeezed her hand. You'll find something. You always do. Lisa nodded, but deep down, doubt gnawed at her. Jobs weren't easy to come by, especially for someone like her, someone without a fancy degree or connections. Later that night, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her phone screen glowing in the dark. Nothing. No one had noticed. No one cared. Social media was full of news stories, celebrity gossip, and memes, but not a single mention of what had happened to her. It was just another bad day, another cruel moment in a world that kept moving, indifferent to the struggles of people like her. But while Lisa drifted into an uneasy sleep miles away, Barron Trump sat in the back of a black SUV, deep in thought. He had seen what happened, how unfair it was, how wrong it felt. Lisa had been the only person that night who had treated him like a normal person, not like a name or a status symbol, and she had been punished for it. As the car pulled up to his family's residence, Barron made a decision. He wasn't going to let this go. Lisa had helped him when she didn't have to. Now it was his turn to help her. The sun had barely risen when loud, urgent knocks jolted Lisa awake. Bang! 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 She sat up in bed, her heart pounding. Who on earth could be knocking like that so early? She stumbled to the door, still groggy, and hesitated before opening it. Through the peephole, she saw something that made her stomach drop. A sleek black SUV was parked right outside her tiny apartment. Several men in dark suits stood in a perfect formation, their expressions unreadable. Her breath hitched. Oh God, and what did I do? With shaky hands, she unlocked the door. A tall man with sharp features and a neatly pressed suit stepped forward, holding out an envelope with a presidential seal. Lisa Reynolds? He asked in a firm, professional tone. Lisa swallowed hard. Yeah? The man handed her the letter. The President of the United States requests to see you immediately. Lisa blinked. Wait, what? Her brain struggled to process the words. The president? The suited men remained silent, waiting for her to respond. Lisa's hands trembled as she tore open the envelope. Inside was an official White House invitation, stamped and signed. The letter was real. This wasn't a prank. Before she could even react, her phone started buzzing uncontrollably. Ding! 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 Lisa glanced at the screen. Hundreds of notifications. Her heart raced as she tapped open her social media feed and nearly dropped her phone. Everywhere, her name was trending. Waitress fired for helping teenager. That teenager was Barron Trump. Kindness rewarded. White House extends an invitation. From fired to famous, America's newest hero? Lisa scrolled down in disbelief. News outlets were covering the story. Influencers were making videos about her. People were furious at the restaurant for firing her. She couldn't breathe. How had this happened overnight? And then she saw it. A post from Barron Trump himself. Last night, I witnessed someone being punished for an act of kindness. Lisa didn't know who I was and she didn't care. She just wanted to help. That kind of kindness should be rewarded, not punished. So I decided to do something about it. The post had millions of likes and shares. The comments were exploding with support. Lisa clutched the letter in her hands, her mind spinning. This was all too much. One of the suited men cleared his throat. "Miss Reynolds, we need to leave now." Lisa looked back at her tiny apartment, at the life she had known just yesterday. Then she looked at the black SUV, at the opportunity standing right in front of her. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward. Hours later, Lisa found herself stepping onto a private jet. She had never even been inside a first-class section of an airplane before, and now she was flying on Air Force One. Everything felt surreal. The plush leather seats, the uniformed attendants treating her like a VIP, the way her name was now being spoken by millions across the country. By the time the plane landed in Washington, Lisa's nerves were on fire. She was quickly escorted through the grand halls of the White House, her heart pounding louder with each step. And then suddenly, she was standing in front of the First Lady. Melania Trump greeted her with a warm smile. "Lisa, it is a pleasure to meet you. We have heard so much about your kindness." Lisa's mouth went dry. "This isn't real. This isn't real." Then a familiar voice spoke. "Lisa." She turned, and there he was. Barron Trump stood before her, taller than she had imagined, his expression sincere. "I never got the chance to say thank you," he said softly. Lisa could barely find her voice. I was just doing what anyone would do." Barron shook his head. Not everyone would. And in that moment, Lisa realized her life was never going to be the same again. Lisa sat in a quiet White House lounge, still struggling to process the whirlwind of events. Just 24 hours ago, she had been a struggling waitress, humiliated and fired. Now she was a national icon of kindness. A press conference was about to begin. White House staff bustled around, cameras flashed, and journalists whispered excitedly. Lisa took a deep breath, her hands trembling. Then the doors opened, and President Donald Trump himself walked in. The room fell silent. Lisa's heart pounded as the president approached the podium. He cleared his throat, then spoke into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we recognize a simple act of kindness, one that should be common, yet too often goes unnoticed." He turned to Lisa. "This young woman, Lisa Reynolds, helped someone not because she knew who he was, but because it was the right thing to do." The cameras zoomed in on her face. Lisa swallowed hard, her emotions swirling. President Trump continued, "It is my honor to announce that Lisa will receive a full scholarship to one of America's top universities so she can pursue any career she chooses, because America takes care of those who show heart, courage, and kindness." The room erupted into applause. Lisa gasped. A full scholarship? She had never even dreamed of going to college. She had barely been able to keep a waitressing job. Tears welled up in her eyes. And then Barron Trump stepped forward. The murmurs in the room grew louder. The president's son was about to speak. Barron took a deep breath, looking out at the sea of reporters. Then he spoke, his voice clear and firm. "True character is shown when no one is watching. Lisa showed kindness without expecting anything in return. That is what makes America great." The room fell silent. His words hit like a tidal wave. Social media exploded within minutes. Lisa, the hero, started trending worldwide. Within hours, the public reaction was overwhelming. People flooded social media with messages of support. "Lisa's story restores my faith in humanity. She deserves all the success in the world." Imagine firing someone for being kind. That restaurant should be ashamed. Barron Trump's speech was the most powerful thing I've heard in a long time. Meanwhile, the restaurant that fired Lisa was facing a storm like never before. Their online reviews plummeted to 1 star. Thousands of people left furious comments. "Boycott this place. Heartless management. You fired someone for helping a kid? Never eating here again. Shameful. Hope you go out of business." The backlash only got worse. Protests broke out outside the restaurant. People gathered with signs that read, "Justice for Lisa. Kindness is not a crime. Fire the manager, not the waitress." Inside the restaurant, chaos unfolded. The owner, Mr. Simmons, sat in his office, watching his business crumble. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, muttering, "This can't be happening." But it was. Customers stopped coming. Regulars canceled their reservations. News stations ran footage of Lisa's firing on repeat, and people were furious. Within days, the restaurant had lost nearly all of its business. Mr. Simmons had no choice. He was forced to resign. The restaurant tried to do damage control. They released a public apology, claiming they had made a terrible mistake and wanted Lisa to return. But Lisa? She gracefully refused. When a journalist asked if she'd consider going back, Lisa simply smiled and said, "Some doors are meant to stay closed." Lisa had won. She had gone from being fired and humiliated to becoming a national inspiration. And as she stood outside the White House, holding the letter that would change her future forever, she finally believed it. Her kindness had changed everything. And life, it was just getting started. Lisa sat by her small apartment window, staring at the city lights. It was hard to believe how much her life had changed in just a few days. A few weeks ago, she was a struggling waitress, working long hours just to survive. Now she had a full scholarship, thousands of job offers, and messages of support from people all over the world. But more than that, she had found her purpose. Lisa had been offered high-paying jobs at luxury restaurants, TV interviews, and even corporate sponsorships. But she turned them all down. She didn't want fame. She didn't want revenge. She wanted to make a difference. Instead, she decided to dedicate her life to helping others. People like her, who just needed a break. With the help of donors who had been touched by her story, Lisa started a charity to help struggling workers, especially waiters, single mothers, and young students who couldn't afford education. And the best part? She wasn't alone. Barron Trump stayed in touch. He personally checked in on her studies, making sure she had everything she needed. Every now and then, Lisa would receive a short message. "Proud of you. Keep going." Barron, despite everything, he had never forgotten the kindness she showed him that day in the restaurant. One simple act, offering food and kindness to someone who seemed alone, had changed everything. Lisa looked directly into the camera, her voice calm but powerful. Never underestimate the power of kindness. One small act can change a life, and sometimes even change the world. The screen faded to black. A single sentence appeared. "Be kind. It always comes back." Lisa's story proves that one small act of kindness can change everything. But what about you? Have you ever been judged unfairly or treated badly for doing the right thing? What happened and how did you handle it? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. If you believe kindness always finds its way back, hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Your support helps keep these stories alive. Turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.